So next up, I'm very honoured because we've got 3 of the founding members of ChangeMakers with us this morning, and they're going to come up, and I'm just switching on the biographies here because they're pretty impressive biographies. But I'm going to ask Crona Gallagher, Denise McCool, and Patsy Toland, if you give them a wee round of applause to come up onto the stage. So you're welcome, folks. You're very welcome. I'm just going to stand here, and we're just going to have a 15, 20-minute conversation about just how this all came together and how this happened. But just before I do that, just let me say something by way of the biography of these folk. Crona Gallagher has recently retired from her post as Director of Further Education and Training with Donegal ETB, a post that Crona held for 6 years. Previously, she worked as an Adult Education Officer with the ETB since 1999, during which time she had responsibility for the development and delivery of social inclusion programmes, including literacy, community education and youth reach, and adult guidance services to adult learners in Donegal. Denise is my colleague on the steering group, and I've got to know quite well. Denise is team lead for community development and environment at the Inishowen Development Partnership. Returning from the US to Inishowen in the 1990s, where she had worked first as Director of Communications at the Irish Immigration Centre, and then volunteer on, what's that radio station called?
Oh, WDVH.
Yeah, what was that stand for? You don't even know. I'm supposed to know that just reading that, but no, that's okay. Denise set up the social economy programme and also established the first immigrant outreach programme within Inishowen. And there's much more to Denise as well. Patsy Toland is an independent global education consultant, a former education coordinator with Self-Help Africa. He widely travelled in East Africa, coordinated numerous global education projects with Irish schools networks and teacher training. Patsy is founder of the Science for Development Award at the BT Young Scientist, and of course that is something that is still going on and growing from strength to strength. One of the things I wanted to talk to the 3 guys about is what drew them to ChangeMakers. How did it all start? And I'm going to ask the 3 the same question. I'm just interested in that. But I have a wee confession to make. When I was first, what drew me to it was the fact that I got a call from Dublin to say, would I go up and be part of it? And I could have made all sorts of excuses, but I bought a wee cottage down in Glanties 5 years ago, and I thought, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? I could go up and make an idiot of myself, and everybody think I'm just stupid, and what good's he to anybody? But then sure, I could go on down to Glanties and be up here, because anybody that's ever come to Donegal, I'm from Derry, and we always holidayed over here with the parents, like everybody in Derry. We came to Crona or Culdaff or places like that. It's always just a joy to come to this county. It's just brilliant. So I'm forever grateful for that as well. So briefly, just for each of you, and we're just talking maybe about, just very, very briefly, tell us, tell us about what brought each of you to the table. What was it all about? We'll start with you, Patsy.
Yeah, well, I suppose I had been working, as you said, with Self-Help Africa, and I was a global education officer, developing new ideas and getting into, mainly at that time, schools. And one of the things I was doing was working on a project with transition years. And in Cairn Community School, I met Denise, doing something the same, working on fair trade and interested in all. And we chatted about that, and we did a bit of work with the students, first of all. And then when I got to know the work that Denise was doing on sort of adult and community work, we realised, this needs to go out beyond schools and go out and maybe sort of marry what my interests were with the sort of the thrust of what Denise's work and IDP's work was. And at that time, Irish Aid were beginning to fund adult and community work, So that was the beginning of it, we met there.
So when I was in my 20s, I worked in Swaziland in Southern Africa on a women's development project, and I developed an interest in development education, I suppose then. So when I came back, I went into youth services, and I was working for a small organisation in Dublin, and I joined the National Youth Council, and there were a lot of different organisations there, and one of them was called Interculture Ireland, which I was kind of drawn to because of the development education part of what they were doing. So that was where I could see a very obvious link into the work that I was doing with young people. And then some years later I moved back home and I started working, as Denny has said, as an adult education officer with the ETB. And at that stage my interest had moved. I was responsible for Youth Reach, which is this Centres for Early School Leavers, but I was very, very interested in supporting the development of community education in the county, because I had been doing freelance work, and as people will know, and as you're all testament to, the community education sector in this county is very, very strong comparatively, comparison to a lot of other counties. And so I, as I say, was very interested through my work with the VC in supporting that. And I think then that's how I got to know Denise. One of the problems we have is probably something to do with age, certainly on my part, and on Patsy's part, that we can't remember when things happened. But I think that I was probably involved with IDP through the community education work, and so that's how I got to know Denise and Shauna. And they asked me if the ETB, or the VC as it was then, if we'd be interested in partnering on a project to look at development education. So it started there.
Denise?
Yeah, I think I'm mic'd
You're
up.
mic'd up,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I suppose for us it felt very natural then, because local development, community work, the principles that are there are often the same principles that apply to working in development education. So we felt it was a natural fit. We've been working, in the schools doing this work, and we thought, our young people being in a rural county like Donegal, tend to migrate and go off. And we felt it was really important to sustain it within our own communities, and we felt that there's a really strong community sector in Donegal, and that they're a natural fit. The work they're doing relates really well to what's going on in terms of, sustainability, human rights, justice, all those kind of key topics that we cover were related to the work we were doing through community education, through the work with Patsy and Self-Help Africa. So it felt like a kind of organic, natural fit to kind of move in that direction and link local and global. And also the conversations we were having with people were saying, how can I, make a difference? How can I be the change that, you need to have in the world to make things happen, and realise that local people have a powerful place in making those changes. So I think we grew from there. We started very small. We said, let's see how this goes. Let's see what we hear from the people on the ground. And really, ChangeMakers is about, really, as we look out here, it's everybody in this room has made it happen and evolved the way it has. So it's been a great journey. I mean, there's been a lot of challenges, and there's lots more that we could be doing, and that. But we felt we have to start where people are at in our county. To recognise Donegal is marginal in terms of what's going on in the national picture, and that there's really great work happening on the ground here, and to recognise that and to link those things together to make ChangeMakers be bigger than just. I suppose the county, we see ourselves having a voice nationally as well in terms of the three different organisations here, and then linking with Crona and Concern really built on that as well. So it's been a really, I suppose, positive experience for us, and we wanted to be really solution focused because we felt it's so big, the challenges are so huge. How do we make this digestible and people feeling that they can have some power in this as well? So those are kind of where we were coming from in terms of that roots of community education, and feeling that that's where the difference can be made. So it really came out of that.
And Crona, just back to you, how did ChangeMakers grow over the years after that initial connection? What was the kind of magic that made it grow?
Well, I suppose from my own perspective, coming from the VC perspective, I was trying to, Denise was saying about being solution focused, and we were always trying to do practical things to support the community groups. As I said, the community sector in the county is very, very strong anyway, and it was about trying to find ways to support the sector so that they would start, taking initiatives and that. So the way we initially, we were trying to remember this, we had a tiny budget from Irish Aid. I mean, we can't even remember how much it was, but kind of under 10,000 a year. And there wasn't room, there wasn't room to employ anybody. But we were trying to then leverage other funds, like, say, for example, a bit of funding that the VC would have had through community education funding and so on. So we were starting to try and one of the things that we did was we delivered some courses that would be like on, say, interculturalism or on global awareness, that kind of thing. I can't remember the exact titles, but there was a level 4 course and a level 6 course. So that was trying to get people involved. They were one of the things. The other, another thing that I remember that we were involved in was the Millennium Development Goals, and that was a good project. What we tried to do there was we tried to involve people, adults, who were attending literacy classes, in kind of to try and bring relevant material around the development goals, and it was the goal around sustainability. That we tried to bring that material into classes. So we did training for tutors, for VC literacy tutors, and then tried to, so that would spread out. And I was looking at something around the book, and there was actually over 100 contributions from students. So there were people on the ground who actually contributed to that book, and it was published and so on. And Patsy was very key in that project. So we were just trying to always find ways of getting people involved in a practical way.
Sure.
That was really it. And Denise has said, and for me it was kind of hard to distinguish, like, is it community education, is it community development, is it development education? But in a way it doesn't matter. They're all of a piece, I think, anyway. And they're all things that all the three organisations were involved in. And what I suppose for me it was key about it was that it was the partnership as well. It was the fact that the three organisations were working together, and Donegal's very good at that. Donegal is very, very good at working in partnership. I would see that in my work nationally, that you would not have the same cooperation. So that was something, I suppose, a strength that we could build on.
Okay. And Patsy, what about you? What do you think were the critical success factors in ChangeMakers?
Well, I think it was, what Crona said, like I suppose with Denise, it was focused on IDP's work, and Crona, it was the VEC. I had come from sort of working on a sort of national level on a number of different groups. I was involved in setting up the IDEA, the Development Education Association, and we used to have an advisory group to the Minister and Irish Aid and all of that, So I was always thinking, sometimes I had to be pulled back regularly, of a bigger picture, and it wasn't sort of random that it was IDP and the VEC and ourselves who were involved, because we were looking at the idea that in any county in Ireland you have a development programme, a community development programme, you have a VEC presence, and you can have an NGO. So for me it was, if we can develop a model here, anybody can do it anywhere across the country. And I think that was, and as Crona said, the strength of the sort of community groups and the interaction between them in Donegal made it hugely successful. But I suppose after that, it was, we took a lot of advice. We partnered with a lot of people. Like our early partners were a development group in Dublin, the Lourdes Youth Centre, and they came to us, and we thought, like an inner city Dublin group who were trying to do the same, but they were really helpful to us. Development Perspectives in Dundalk came to us and worked. So we worked with a lot of groups who already had the experience, and we said, we can learn from them, and then we can share back our experiences then and bring them, to that sort of table as well, So it was about not being afraid to reach out to whoever was there that we thought had a relevant part to play in it, and then share back in it.
So Denise, here we are 10 years on. So what do you think the opportunities are in the future?
Well, I think, we did a strategic review last year and we talked to all our partners, we talked to the community sector locally, we talked to our mentors and our trainers and a lot of people in this room. And so we've come up with a kind of next steps approach, but still to be open. I think we're always keeping that open mind that it's not, it's not fixed, that there's scope to change and evolve as we go. Funny, I was reading something the other day, Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge, and I think that ChangeMakers brings a lot of imagination to what we do, and to think laterally and think differently about how we do this work, and to listen. I mean, a lot of how we've shaped what we do comes from, you know, the tutors out there, the people that are involved in what we do. So we've been very lucky. We've had a really great team of people that either are activists, work with us as trainers, community groups. So we've really, I suppose, it's been, as I said earlier, it's felt very organic, but also that thing of, you know, being able to reach out and ask for advice, but know we have a lot of expertise in the room. We don't have to know everything. We know enough to know what we need to do, and we were very focused also that it wouldn't be just about kind of, you know, I think the three things were reflection, analysis, and action. So that piece is very important for us, that we do action out of everything that we do as well. So. Yeah, so I think the future, there's a lot of challenges. I was just saying to Roisin earlier that I heard Kiva DeBarra on talking about, I suppose, the crises that we have, and talking about the need for, you know, food security, energy, and finance. And those are the three things I think that we talk about in our workshops. We might have different names, but ultimately, if you look at those three elements of even at a local area level, if you look at those things at a community level, a national level, and a global level, you know, if we get that right, you know, we'll make a big difference. And I think that's we want to keep that conversation going. And I think the collective piece of coming together, like this seminar is always, like, some people are working like alone or in very small groups. So this sense of coming together and that sense of us being part of something bigger than ourselves is really important. So I think
thank you. Well, look, I just want to thank all three of you for, you know, you had that vision and that passion, and you could see what this could become, and it probably has surpassed your expectations, because what ChangeMakers do, I think anyway, is incredible. And I think it's a wonderful legacy that all three of you have been part of. Just have that idea and kickstart that idea and bring it to where it is now after 10 years. You know, what's it going to be like after 20 years? That's what I'd be thinking. I think it's going to be very, very powerful. So thanks to all three of you, and thank you very much.